This just in, it turns out the Pisces lunar eclipse last week is destroying marriages. It's time to also take the test drive on the new reality. And yes, it's official. There will be a new world order. We'll have all those details and more on this week's Namaste Today and your personal soul horoscope. Greetings and blessings to you, my friends, galactic family, and earthly neighbors. Welcome to Namaste Today, featuring soul horoscopes and the zodiac weather. I'm your host, Christopher Witecki, the founder of the Astrology Step System and the acting sensei to SeriousJoy.com. Consider me a friend here, week after week for 19 years now, a cosmic comedian here to laugh with you along the way. We're going to help guide you week after week, all 12 signs, into what we call our cosmic ascension. But before we get started, just a little reminder. If you're watching on YouTube, please be kind and do subscribe. Hit the bell button so you're notified. And if you're watching on any other platform, if you would be so kind as to leave a comment, it'll help our social media overlords find the right customers for us. So that said, we've got a lot of things happening this week, but let's first start with our sun signs in the headlines. This week, our top story is Saturn double dips. That's right. Saturn spends about 2 years, by the way, 2.5 years, rather, in each of the signs when it goes around the clock. And so these final retreats happen where Saturn will double dip into the prior sign. This always happens. And right now, Saturn is double dipping into Pisces. It's almost like Saturn is double checking, making sure everything's right before it goes into the new sign. Now, we did some research here at Serious Joy, and we looked at the last 3 times that we had Saturn double dipping into Pisces. It was 1935 to 37, 64 to 66, and 94 to 96. Those are the last 3 times, respectively. Now, in 35-37, this was right around the end of Depression to the World War II period. And this is right when everyone was worried about eating and being compassionate with Saturn and Pisces, recovering from the Depression, to right away Hitler remilitarizing the Rhineland. And you had Stalin at the same time starting to kill people, his own people, with genocide. So it was really dark and ugly. And it's like after all that nice compassion, Saturn goes into Aries, and what does it do? All this blood, all this horrible stuff. Now, this is the pattern we keep seeing. It's like you have the compassion that revives, and then you have brutal conflict followed. Let's look again the next time. Saturn doubled into Pisces in 64 to 66, okay? And at that time, humanity was witnessing the Gulf of Tonkin happening in Vietnam, starting to rise. There was also a cultural revolution in China where they were killing all their people who didn't abide by their rules also. So again, there was a compassion time followed by this really bloody murder time. And the last time Saturn double dipped was actually 1994-96. We had Mandela elected at the time in South Africa. Amazing, right? A man of the people, for the people. The internet was actually in a browser war at the time, and Netscape was winning, not Netflix. And there was also these brutal wars in Rwanda and Bosnia. So again, you have this Pisces compassion clashing with chaos. And it's like weird how endings and big shifts light up like this on the Pisces-Aries border. That's the rub about it, right? Because Saturn stirs up in Pisces all this dreamy, let's heal each other, let's unite, let's dissolve borders. But then when it drags its feet, it's like retreating. Suddenly compassion becomes like, oh crap, they're waiting too long. Someone gets impatient, and you have this like fanaticism. Or worse, you have people who are guilty that turn violent. So it's interesting how this works. Like the Mandela huge empathy thing still had the Bosnia conflict and in Rwanda. And Saturn basically said, if you're so compassionate, well, then why didn't you follow through the rest of the people? It's like Saturn's almost punishing us for not taking it across worldwide, right? But anyways, it's almost like the empathy's evil is actually hysteria. And so it kind of fits into today's model is what I'm saying. We have recently gone through, I think, a good feel good period here over the summer with, things in the United States. People don't feel good, but they want to feel good. They're trying to find those great things. But we're about to go into Saturn and Aries for good. And when that happens, what's going to happen? That's the big question mark. Now, I feel that there are different breakdowns to how different signs will deal with it. And I put them into 3 categories, first of all. I think there's first, the signs are going to get it worst, okay? The signs that get it worse have the biggest earthquakes from this. That means their lives will possibly have a bit of a breakdown. It could be like where the conflict would actually be, for instance. Not Bosnia and Rwanda, but now in these signs. So the ones that will have the biggest earthquake, in my opinion, will be Pisces, Virgos, Aries, and Libras. Those are the biggest conflicts. They'll be doing the biggest changes personally as a result, too. The signs where the shakeups will be visible, but not so much a huge detrimental. It means you'll see them shaking, but you won't see them go down, are the fixed signs: Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Leo. But the signs that are going to be most likely there have a nothing burger, they're not hurt at all, and so they basically turn into helpers for others, are pretty common, and that is the Cancers, I think the Capricorns, the Sagittarius, and the Gemini. So, but first we're going to talk about one other piece that's tied to this, and that's called the New World Order. And we've all heard this term New World Order, but I argue that it has been spelled incorrectly. I believe new should be spelled K-N-E-W. And whoever spelled to N-E-W was the liar, because in creation, there is nothing new. Okay. Everyone knows everything coming in. So how can it be brand new? N-E-W. How can there even be a brand new? If you're really a wise person, then you knew all along. All these Saturn, Pisces, Aries shifts are actually part of this New World Order. I think this is the line. And this is why I'm saying the New World Order will happen, but spelled a different way, literally. Now, to go vast and deep into what's happening, you have to understand that this New World Order, which we've all been born to be a part of, actually goes back to, in my opinion, a conflict back in Atlantis. That's right. That overall, people who are involved in this moment were citizens of the ancient Atlantis. Now, why does it have to come up? Isn't it ancient? Well, here's the thing. It was hijacked. No one on Atlantis got their karma filled out. And because Atlantis was destroyed, there was no way to actually come back and do your karma. There had to be a new Atlantis, and that new Atlantis is known as the United States of America. So big picture here, we're now here for a new world order, and every person here has a special role in that new world order. Every sign has a special role, which is determined by Pluto in your sign. So where your Pluto is now. It's also based on your generation, which is based on Pluto and what sign it was when you were born. And everyone's going to be a part of this conflict and or freedom happening in the next 6 to 9 months. It's going to be a deep process, and it's beginning now. The goal is actually to reinstate Atlantis, okay? But Atlantis had fallen because of some alien, basically, infiltration. We'll talk about that in another show another time. But however, it does mean that we're now moving into that period. With the lunar eclipse that we had last week, I've noticed that the old issues with the old order, the Dark Ages, have fallen apart, and lots of karmic relationships have changed or split because people have a special role to play in this new world order that's coming up. Now, this new world order, incidentally, does begin probably the conflict in the next couple of weeks. I think we're going to start to see things that are the lineup of it. And I think the official battle begins, if you want to call it a battle, which Palladians call the frequency wars, begins in February or March. So ideally, you want to be prepared now for what's going to happen then. And I don't think there's going to be many signs as to where things are going. I think it's going to happen sort of under the seams energetically. So to help with this, I've actually proposed here a webinar and workshop series that I'm going to be doing October 10th called New World Order. Okay. And in this series, I will do a 1 hour and 20-minute lecture followed by a 2-hour workshop where you bring your chart and we will work through specifically on camera exactly where your particular launch date is for your sign and also for your rising sign. So you'll walk away from this this workshop with a real understanding of how long you have to get things ready for and what your role is going to be. And I think it's going to be very helpful for you to know that. Those who sign up for this particular webinar will be part of a community that will be ongoing in my new community that I'm launching here in the next couple of weeks. So it's a good moment to take advantage and get deep now before things happen, because my countdown series goes out in early January. And so if you wait till countdown to learn about it, you probably would be stuck a little behind of the process. So right now there's a wait list available. You can get on the wait list. Come to New World Order, spelled the right way, .xyz. New World Order, .xyz. All right. Now, that said, we've got a lot to talk about, friends. But first, let's take a look at the week's moods and your zodiac weather. This zodiac weather covers Saturday, September 13th to Friday, September 19th, 2025. And today's zodiac weather is sponsored by, tell them, Jenny D.
This week's zodiac weather is sponsored by Sage Prosperity Partners. Every leader has the capacity to become a great leader. Founded by consciousness architect Lisa M. Brazelton, Sage Prosperity Partners transforms the few who influence the many. Learn more about her Chamber of Well Consciousness classes at sageprosperitypartners.com.
Taking a look at the weekend forecast. Over the weekend, we move from step 20 to step 21, where things start to get fun. But it may not start that way. Let's drill down. On Saturday, it's sunny and shifting. Step 20 means that you will now feel like things are falling apart because they're actually coming together. Once emotion hits the Virgo state of awareness, all the problems you've been ignoring with your hyper-awareness may come to the surface. You may feel uncomfortable, you may feel unsteady, and you may feel as if things are going to fall apart. But what's actually happening is they're coming together. Be mindful of where the boundary is, and be sure to go out with an I protect statement. Now, the moon is in Gemini, so a lot of those feelings are coming from thoughts. Watch your mind, keep them in adjustment. The root intention is I become opinionated, and the affirmation is I am making small adjustments but exponential growth. Incidentally, it's also a Cazimi day early that morning. Mercury will conjunct the sun at 20 degrees Virgo, which means the mind and the heart are on the same page. On Sunday, it's sunny and cooling. Step 21 is when it starts to get fun, which means Jupiter rules the day. Expect to learn something today, a door to open, a new pathway to unfold. It's a day to explore, to go shopping, go on adventure, or to travel. Energetically, you are opening up to a different opportunity of how the future may feel, perhaps shifting away from fears and opening up to unlimited possibilities. The root intention is I become more. And the affirmation is I am organizing expanded reality. Taking a sneak peek at the upcoming week, over the 5 days of the week, we move from step 22, Virgo, to step 26. That is a shakeup in the beginning and a closing down and commitment by the end of the week. So things will wrap up for Virgo during this week. On Monday, it's sunny and electric. Step 22 tells us that Uranus rules today. Make sure not to touch metal after you wear socks on the carpet. Things will be a bit shocking. You might have some shocking details about what's not going to happen in the future, leaving room for what is. The moon is in Cancer, so you are feeling every molecule of that step 22. And overall, Venus in Cancer will sextile Mars in Libra, so when you have female and male working on the same line, it means that something will be created. Now, they will be sextiling at step 25. A spiritual message may come through or a spiritual miracle. The root intention of the day is I become evolved, and the affirmation is I am choosing my two. On Tuesday, it's sunny and evaluating. Step 23 tells us that Mercury rules the day. It's a pensive day, communication, good analytics, good meetings, and the moon in Cancer means you're going to be honest with your feelings with everyone. We do have some events going on in the skies. However, early in the morning, Venus in Leo will trine Chiron retrograde at step 26. So you're going to open up your heart's desires with your ego's cleanliness and healing attitude. So it's like cleaning up the ego and cleaning up the character. Then later in the afternoon or early morning, Mars in Libra will oppose Chiron retrograde. So this will be a back and forth also with Chiron of the character you are becoming versus the humility that is built in this new character. Now the root intention is I become integrated, and the affirmation of the day is I am understanding the power of love. On Wednesday, hump day, it's sunny and beautiful. Step 24 means that Venus rules the day. No wonder it's beautiful. You are feeling where you belong and you're feeling where you don't belong when it comes to the future. The moon's in two parts. It starts in kind of moody Cancer, but then shifts into Leo, where you'll be diving deep on your feelings and your heart, and what your heart really loves. The root intention is I become creation. And the affirmation of the day is I'm becoming both the creator and the creation. On Thursday, it's sunny and mature. Step 25 tells us that Neptune rules the day. This is a day where intuition will be strong. Pay attention to the coincidences and make sure that you listen to those guides of yours. The moon is in Leo, so your heart is lifted with love and you're interested in creative and interesting things. That means if something is boring or mundane, it might be difficult to deal with. Transits are in the air. At 6:05 a.m., Mercury will ingress into Libra, shifting focuses from the hyper details to your balance. And then later, at 6 p.m. that night, Mercury will oppose Neptune retrograde at 0 degrees Aries. This may be a tug of war between what you're intuiting and what you are thinking. Guess which one is most likely true? The intuiting. The root intention affirmation is I become soulful. And the affirmation is I am hearing spiritual counsel in a whole new way. And then lastly, on Friday is sunny and ready. Step 26 says that Saturn rules today. Saturn, the decision maker, putting leadership and responsibility with also the ability to follow through on your shoulders. The moon begins in Leo, so you're feeling that lovey-dove-dove of Leo, but then shifts into Virgo, preparing for the second new moon in Virgo. So things might become a bit nasty in the sense of details and too much to handle. But combined with the moon in Virgo and step 26, it does tell us that this is the perfect day to devote yourself to the life that you really want. One bonus, which may not be a bonus, is through the night you might have fought some demons or shadow. That's because Mercury trine Uranus retrograde and then trine Pluto retrograde through the night, both calling on the mind to quit it with the thinking that is not in line with the heart. Then early in the morning, Venus went into Virgo, so we started to open up to all these details. Therefore, the root intention of the day is I become willing, and the affirmation, my mind seeks collaboration with my spirit. Hello, my fellow astro enthusiasts. It's now time for your planets and transits. Well, we like to coin the week usually with a title at SiriusStory.com. That's how we unfold all of our lines of communication to have a clear title of what the week's about. And we believe that this week is called Launching the New Program. When we say program, we mean program, as in programming, a storyline that you were taking, a character that you were playing, the entire bit of your new role in what we call this new world order. Now, this week in particular, what we're launching is our new way of operating. And Virgo, if you don't know, is sort of the hardware of spirituality. Virgo manifests the body and what the body is capable of, and it manifests our environment and our day-to-day life. It's basically the great organizer of all things. It finds all the right places for everything to be. And the reason why Virgo is this great healer is because the Virgo knows naturally the order of things. All right. So Virgos are obsessive when things are out of order. Okay. They start cleaning things up. And so this is going to be the new program of Virgo. In other words, a new way of operating in our reality. And I believe that we're here to operate in a much more magical way, frankly, that we have connection and communication to this reality, that this reality that you see is actually a reflection of your inner world and how you treat yourself. So what you see in the world is an example of how you treat yourself. It's almost like an X-ray that you can now live in, okay? Now, this week in particular, in this launch of the new program, we're going to do our testing, our beta testing and tutorials. In other words, you're going to test out your power this week in each of 12 signs and see how well you can manipulate your life and your reality. And the key question to ask yourself is, do you want to play a game? Because a game ultimately is what it's going to be about. That's a throwback, of course, to the 80s and also a famous movie back then about nuclear war. But it's very similar in the sense that we are now going to be in this moment with human history where it may or may not be real. It may be a simulation of a war and not really a war, like War Games, the film was about. Or it may be an actual war. It kind of depends on, how it turns out. I'm not sure. And the question will be, the best way to win is not to play, right? That kind of thing. Now, I mentioned this already. All this, I think, is part of a new Atlantean energy that's coming forward. We get deep on that in another lecture. But I want to talk about what's happening specifically this week and how you can maximize it. Now, overall this week, we go from step 24 Virgo to step 0 Libra. So we finish up our Virgo transit. And what we're doing is we're finessing our ability to control our reality. Your reality is controlled essentially by your feelings, all right? That's what step astrology teaches us, that from step 20 to step 29 is how we actually operate. Whether or not you believe it, you'll have to try it for yourself. Everything is actually changing by your emotional reaction to life. It's not changing by your thoughts. It's not changing by even your hands on the dial. Mostly it's how you feel. How you feel is what puts out in the universe of communication, almost like a pheromone, like a spiritual pheromone. And the universe responds to that feeling and interacts. So it's from step 20 to step 29, all the 20s, the third decade of a sign, that we actually get good at driving that sign. And so this week from 24, that's when we accept control, to 29, we're testing on control. That will be the schema of the week. So we're basically testing out our new operating system and hardware working together. Now, with that said, I think that probably the big dates really is we have Mercury moving to Libra. So that's going to make things a lot more slushy. That happens on September 18th, by the way. So we start to get really slushy. Our hands aren't as clear. It's almost like driving a Cadillac versus driving a BMW. It's like Cadillac is a lot more sloppy. If you've driven Cadillacs, you know. So things get a little more sloppy as far as our mind being in control of things. Another aspect is that Venus will move into Virgo. Now, that's a little different. That's going to make the resolution very higher in our experience. And so from the 19th onward, you're going to really feel hyper aware about everything. So sensitivity goes way up. All right. Another interesting thing, of course, will be September 21st. Now, when this happens, we have actually the sun opposing Saturn in Pisces. That will be a moment where your heart has got to really look at whether or not you're on the right path for yourself. And that will be a come to Jesus moment for a lot of people, by the way, because a lot of people are going to realize that they have not made the move they need to make, that they need a relationship to end or a job to end. Something has to go in order for us to go step forward to something else. And so this is going to be a very important aspect in the sense that that you have to decide really if you've been kidding yourself or not. And if you have been kidding yourself, well, then, geez, you better make a change like pronto. And so I'm expecting a lot of last minute surprises for the population. People breaking up, people quitting jobs, people who accepted a job, they turn it down. They're not going to take it anymore because they realize it's on the wrong side, especially as you start to really understand, what this new world order is and how it's to do with like an ancient side of yourself. So I think the week really comes to an incredible head, really, when we have on the 21st, we have, of course, a eclipse. And this is a final eclipse that's going to happen at 29 degrees. Now, what that means is 20 degrees Virgo. That means that's the Grandmaster degree of Virgo. And that Grandmaster degree really is what sets the programming and the standards going forward. In fact, 29 is so popular and so powerful that 29 will actually control all signs by nature of how it works. And the construction of 29 is when the emotional life 2 comes together with the ego life 9. And so ego and emotion, and the way ego and emotion interplay, is the most powerful, hands on the joystick that you can get. It's literally how you drive your ship or drive your vehicle here, your spiritual vehicle, your human, Hueman, your human vehicle, is through how your ego responds to your feelings. Now, we've been programmed to where it's how our ego responds to other people's feelings, and that was created by the people who spell new N-E-W. Who said there's a new reality you've never seen before, just follow me, and I'll get you hooked up with it. Right, we've heard that before. But the point is that solar eclipse of 29 pretty much basically installs your new system, your new operating system, to your entire life. So you could say that by 0 Libra, the game begins. The game begins and the new world order begins, because now everyone is fitted with their new spiritual equipment. their new spiritual message with Pisces, and their new hardware interaction with Virgo. You're now ready to play this game. And by the way, my spelling of game is GAIM because it has to do with something else. Your growth aim. That's the spiritual game involved. So this week is really about where you're going to stand. I think in the first part of it, it's like asking the question, are you on track? When the sun opposes Saturn, are you on track? Are you really on the right path? Because a lot of people have been seduced back into the old once again. I've been surprised how many signs who I convinced knew, or clients I just convinced they knew the right path. Then, their boyfriend called or their ex called or something happened and they found themselves on the old team again. It's like, what are you doing? Right? You spent 10 years getting out of that relationship and now you're going back. So some people are just cruising for a bruising. And some people have moved to the new area, but now they're crying and worried about it because they feel like they made a mistake, that they're left alone. No, there's always a test, before you end something. And so I think the solar eclipse will be that test. It's going to be some sort of drama that happens in your life that really tests what your values are. And it's going to be followed by you entering into the new world and what side you'll be on in this great conflict in our lifetime, the last great one, which is the New World Order. So it's time to do some horoscopes, because in each of the 12 signs, I'll give you the best answer I can to determining what that test is about and what your world's going to be in this week and testing out your equipment, plus some other details as well. So we'll be right back after this message and your soul horoscope.
Hi, I'm Lisa Brazelton, the architect of the program and founder of Sage Prosperity Partners. I am excited for you to start your journey in having prosperity in a way you've never had it before. Join me this fall for a couple of different cohorts that are starting. I am the facilitator. For a limited time, Serious Joy members will receive a discount code below, and I look forward to seeing you this fall.
Are you looking for inspiration to grow your conscious business? Serious Joy's Board of Light is a sacred alliance of lightworkers, visionaries, and spiritual leaders dedicated to awakening conscious leadership. As a member, you'll receive professional support in the forms of bi-monthly Congress of Light meetings, exclusive community networking, and an array of guest speaker webinars each month to guide you on your personal dreams. First quarter guest highlights include consciousness architect Lisa M. Brazelton, Dharma coaching expert Sahara Rose, and Chiron specialist Karen Croney. Don't miss this profound lineup of wisdom. Join now for only $250 per year and be a part of the enlightened professional re-evolution. What are you waiting for?
And we're back. You've seen the Zodiac weather and what the moods and weather will be for the entire collective. Now let's dive into you and your particular soul sign horoscope. That said, we have a lot going on this week. We're going to be beta testing our new gear, if you will, our new way of interacting with reality, which is what Virgo is. And these late degrees of Virgo, everything starts from 20 to 29, are the degrees in which we actually do things. Believe it or not, everything is mechanicalized by your emotions. That's right. So for those who are cold, people who don't have a real connection to their feelings, you have a hard time connecting to reality. You have a hard time getting things that you want out of reality. Nobody feels you as a result. And as a result, no one does anything for you either, right? So you have to have emotion in order to get things done. Those who are too emotional, of course, go the other way. They can burn things out, burn people out, push people away. And so really it's the mastery of your emotion that makes you a master human, H-U-E-M-A-N, human. So for each 12 signs this week, I want to talk about what this final testing phase will be in your life. Really spending from the Cazimi, which happens, the sun and Mercury coming together, which is your heart and mind coming together. That's on the 13th, this weekend. So this weekend at step 20, your heart and mind are like, all right, I'm approaching my future this way. And you'll have it in your headset, in your head, in your mindset, and your head and your mindset to, hopefully go that way. Test it out. We'll see by the eclipse. Now, the next aspect that I want to talk about is then Mercury will oppose Neptune midway in the week. On Thursday, September 18th, Mercury was in a Libra, where it grand trines with other slow-moving planets, and then forms a realization inside yourself of why you love yourself and why you deserve a certain future. So by next Thursday, right before the eclipse, you get this realization of you're worth it and why. I'll talk about where that is for you as well. And then lastly, we have, of course, the eclipse that happens at the end of the week. And that will be at actually next Sunday. So Sunday the 21st, so a week after this broadcast. So we will actually cover it more next week. But that eclipse will be the final test on that Sunday at 29 degrees Virgo. That's when you will, in fact, install your new operating system into all parts of your being. And because it's an eclipse, a solar eclipse, it means it's going to last for a long time. It's a big imprint of energy. This is the preparation of you for the new view of life, so to speak, N-E-W, K-N-E-W view. Now, that said, why don't we start with our trailblazers, the Aries. Aries, you are, of course, using Virgo to manage reality. And so typically in the past, you have operated your reality by pushing harder, trying harder. You know, you burned out your body, you threw out your back, but gosh, you got it done. But it was at the cost of a lot of pain, unfortunately. And so you are now becoming more of an enchanter on the earth and developing your emotions into the moment. And so coming into a new power by being persuasive, perhaps, other diplomatic forms of being able to operate. Now, the Cazimi for you will be the realization that your approach to life itself is not correct. You have simply not considered your feelings. And that could even be your feelings in such as, you know, not wanting to feel bad, not wanting to have pain in your body, not wanting to, you know, have people not like you and then feel that all the time. You know, you're a person who can put up a wall, but it takes energy to keep up a wall. So you don't really want to. So I think the new Aries of the new era want to be more congenially connected to the world. They want to operate from these newer vibrations and frequencies instead of from pushing and brutal pushing. And so what you're doing is you're going to be trying out your week where you allow your feelings to make the choice of which way to go. All right. That is, of course, if you step out the day really understanding, you need to really do an evaluation of your feelings in the morning, see how you're feeling, get a temperature, and then make sure you're not acting on those feelings when you interact with people. So your interactions with people this week are extremely important. They will make or die an event. They will, you know, end up result in being fired or being hired. Like they are ultimately what has to be mastered, period. Now, that said, you'll be tested, of course, on that final Sunday at 29 degrees, where you'll then imprint what your lifestyle is going to be. And if you're making a choice between two lifestyles, you know, the lifestyle that you want is probably the one you should go for, the one that your heart wants the most and the one you feel most comfortable with. All right. So, you know, respond as according to how you feel comfortable. Now, I talked about that Mercury into Libra. When Mercury goes into Libra, the Aries are going to be really focusing on their relationships differently. First of all, it's going to time to master Jedi your own relationship to yourself. So your mind's going to be calculating a lot of, you know, how to think of yourself, how to talk to yourself, how to analyze yourself, and how to not judge yourself. That's so important because really think of yourself as coming out of body and getting behind yourself as your own coach. When that happens, you're going to connect that energy to Pluto at 1 and also to Uranus. And so you're going to end up thinking differently. As a result, you end up also claiming territory differently. So by changing your relationship to yourself, you belong somewhere else in the world and you belong saying something else. So keep those things in your mind. Lastly, we have Venus in Leo, which is going to sextile Mars in Libra. And for you, this ultimately means that we're going to have a yod pointing to the epicenter to you, which is your relationship to God. So it turns out that your big earthquake point is how you relate to God and your relationship to God or creation. That is going to basically tie in what your heart wants and what your relationships need from you. So come that yod, it's really important to know that the firewall for you is always you with God versus the world. If you want to use the example I was talking about earlier of Saturn double dipping, Saturn always double dips when it comes to your relationship with God. And it seems like if you came out fighting, you and God didn't get along very well. Taurus. Taurus, this is a great one for you. This is going to be you practicing making your dreams come true. Turns out Tauruses are very meticulous when it comes to their dreams and very detail-oriented, which is totally true. And overall, I think Tauruses are people of passion, but I believe that Tauruses tend to be a bit reserved and they hold in their feelings sometimes a little too long. So it's time to breathe a little bit differently. It's time to love yourself on a higher level and recognize that your feelings and how you feel is sort of what determines the mood of the entire farm, if you want to call it that. So you'll have a realization over the weekend about the right way to think about your inner child and the right way to think about your inner child and what it's going to get in life, right? So a coaching on that for yourself is going to be important. It's important that you monitor your life day to day and you monitor your creations day to day by how you're feeling, not necessarily how they're progressing. You don't need to look at the material. You don't need to look at the bank account. You need to look at the quality of the product, the quality of what you're creating. And this will be tested that Sunday, like I said, on the 21st with the eclipse, the solar eclipse going on that day. So Tauruses will be, for better or for worse purposes, launching their personal dreams that following Sunday. Now, that said, Mercury in Libra, however, is actually, if that's going to happen, you have to think differently of your self-worth. And so your self-worth basically comes together with the way you live in the moment, what your self-worth is, and how you believe in yourself. Those three are the grand trine, where love must determine your worth and love must determine your belief. And you must also live that principle in your life. And so uniting your life and your body and your health with this new principle will allow you to pilot this personal dream to its creation, I believe. And so if you're a person who's been thinking about going back to the gym or starting something like that, yes, this would be the time. Absolutely. You want to be one with your body, because your body is the magnet that you use to manifest. And Tauruses, have big bodies, usually, that type of thing. Now, with Mercury, with the yacht I was talking about, with the epicenter of Saturn double dipping for you has to do with who you're known as in society. And so you're going to be kind of grappling with redefining who you try to be in the world. In the past, you were trying to be something that you were once called as negative. So a lot of Tauruses were trying to not be the bad guy, right? But you can't create a positive on a not. So your final dip of Pisces is that you change your relationship to the world. You have a new karmic relationship to the world, and that will then span down to basically your fourth house, which is your emotional foundation and the way you live in your body. So your emotions and how you feel and how you live in your health of your body, these are what actually fuel your ability to change your perspective of the world and your perspective of where you play in it. And so I think in times like those times we talked about with Saturn double dipping, you would have gone really sour on that double dip, basically in your faith in yourself, had you not chosen the right place in the world. All right, Gemini. It's funny. This is so true too. You, I know, are a thinker and you love to think and talk, but really what controls you are your feelings. In fact, your foundation, everyone's foundation is their feelings. And for you, use Virgo, a very highly detailed with lots of specifics to determine how you feel. But to master your feelings, you can't get into the details. That's what the devil is. You've got to get into the overall plur of it, how it feels at large. So with the Cazimi happening this weekend, you're going to realize that you have to look at security from a different perspective. It cannot be whatever you've been using before. It has to be something different, a different approach from your mind and your body as far as how to feel secure, let's say, without having some of the details you wanted before. And then by the end of that transit, you'll have the eclipse at the edge of the fourth house, which means that you will then realize that security itself must now go forward, and you'll test that emotional security as a result. So I think that the last wrap of Virgo for you is going to be a lot of emotional tests. And don't be too surprised if like some sort of tragedy or some sort of drama or something sort of throws a curveball at you and makes you think on your feet, literally, or feel on your feet is the way I should put it. Now, when Mercury goes into Libra, this is for you the beginning of your personal dreams coming true. Once you have set up your emotional foundation, your home, your family, now it's time to go have fun. And so Mercury in this space will create a grand trine, which is going to unite your ego and how you behave, along with your personal boundaries and where you draw lines. And this is going to help you to realize a new way of loving yourself that is proactive to you having your life turned into what it wants and feel good all the time. The other thing to make point is that this yod that's happening, this yod in Pisces actually points to your career legacy. And so your tipping of the Pisces, the double dip of Pisces, is that you're going to take another look at career and where it's heading and realize that career has often been something to overcome your father's judgment or your mother's judgment or to prove in the world you are who you are. It hasn't necessarily been the expression of who you want to be. Okay, so the double dip of Saturn and Pisces for you is, let's take another look at our career ambition and our goals. And let's also look at two other things in coordination with it. One is how you think about yourself, and the other is what your heart really wants. And so what your heart really wants and what you think of yourself should be what is actually going into this new career direction. And it should be kept in mind during the transition and the eclipses exactly what that's going to be. So be mindful of your heart and be mindful of what you think and what you say to yourself. And that's the Geminis. All right. Cancers. Cancer, you are an emotional creature, but in reality, you are a person who actually analyzes and controls things very much from your mind. Use Virgo to create your reality. And so although you're emotional, your reality is all in your head. And quite often, all you have to do is change a Cancer thinking about something, and they can pop out of their situation and into another one quite quickly. You could say you're the fastest healer when it comes to changing your mind. And so quite often what's making you sick is your thoughts themselves are what's making you sick. So it's time now to manage your mind with your feelings. In other words, if you don't feel good about it, don't think about it. If it's something you don't feel good about when you think about, don't do that either. Don't bring it up. Don't give it energy. Don't give it one thought or one moment of time. And so use your feelings this week to feel through what conversations should be, feel out whether or not you should say something in the first place, feel whether or not you should make announcements or be subtle about it. Use your feelings, do the walking here. Let your feelings determine where the big picture of your thinking actually goes. Now, that said, the eclipse will be some sort of test of communication. I would not be surprised if Cancers are accused of lying or something that would like really upset your self-worth, and that will cause you to go potentially into a tizzy, and that will be where your ability to stay focused will actually come from. That your feelings have to feel good first in order for you to think correctly, and that if you have a problem with your thoughts, go to your feelings. They're probably the culprit underneath. Now, that said, Cancer, the Mercury moving into Libra for you has to do with the fact that you will now begin to think about your childhood and your feelings about things. And this childhood feelings things is going to actually work and turn into believing in yourself or not. That's part of it. And also your place when it comes to drawing boundaries. So where you draw the boundaries is going to be very important to whether or not your heart feels good about life and what your place is in the world. So be mindful of that. The double dip we talk about with Saturn and Pisces has to do with really with, for you, your 9th house. So your believing in yourself comes down to what you choose to believe, right? And so when it dips back from Aries into Pisces, you might question whether or not your life purpose is on track or if you've chosen the right purpose. And that's a good question to ask, because if you find yourself in Aries next year, you'll be very upset that you didn't go to college, you didn't do what you really wanted, and you'll be upset that you missed that opportunity. It's now time to really think about what is your true purpose, what you're here to really do. And from there, the yacht is going to help you in the sense of you'll connect that to you'll connect that to your self-worth, and also you'll connect that to how you feel. All right. So those will all come together. Ultimately, though, the question is, what do you believe in and what's your purpose as a result? That's going to be what gets you out of that Saturn Aries line. And I think we see Cancers changing careers next year. Be fascinating. All right. Leos. Leo, for you, Virgo is money. The ability to make money, the details that go involved in making money. So, Leos quite often have many schemes under their sleeve in order to create money and wealth. And so this will be a week of really practicing what actually makes the abundance. The truth is how you feel and how you come out feeling is what ends up drawing in abundance to you. It's all the performance of you and how bright you feel or not. So you'll start piloting this new program of incorporating how you feel into your intentions for what you want to make, and recognizing that feeling bad leads into poor profit and feeling good leads into wealth. Now, you'll be tested on that, of course, the following Sunday, where some business or something might be a challenge to see whether or not you're going to stand up for it. And of course, you must respond emotionally to yourself and not to the incident itself. Okay, so stay away from the incident, focus on you, the creator of the incident. Now, with that said, Mercury in Libra means that you're going to be thinking differently about how you think. How you think is not appropriate anymore. You must be mindful of self-love in every thought you have. If a mind does not have self-love behind the intention, the mind should stop and not think anymore on that level. Now, this turns into your place in the world on the one hand, and also turns into going blank here, into your relationships, sorry. And so you'll find that for relationships and how you see yourself in the world, and also how you value yourself, these all come together to one superpower. In other words, and by thinking positively and talking positively to yourself, you will in fact set yourself up for abundance and wealth. Now, the line between Pisces and Aries for you has to do with transformation to self-belief. In other words, you have issues with yourself. If you don't transform yourself and make the changes have to be made, you then have less luster when it comes to believing in yourself. And so that line for you can determine good cop, bad cop based on how well you followed and did your homework when Saturn was in Pisces, changing your personal boundaries and where you draw the line. So in essence, it's important for you to make sure that you're hyper aware that you've gotten everything transformed that needs to transform. Get all these changes done and under with right away. And as you do, you'll find that it's easier than usual for you to feel valuable and feel honored. The more you have things cleaned up and the small lines kind of drawn, and the signature and the T's crossed, the I's dotted, like all those details of your change, the more you'll set up and believe in yourself in the fresh day of Saturn and Aries. I think Leos who did not make the change in the past went across the Saturn Aries line, and they would then go take it out on how to believe that they were not believable, that they didn't believe in themselves. And so that would create the dark Leo in the sense of the Leo that does taking on the world versus light Leo that feels good about themselves already and helps the world instead. So what you do with your power and royalty looks like it comes down to whether or not you followed through. Only you know if you're cheating, and that's what it comes down to. All right. Virgos. Virgo, this is going to be a big one for you, a huge one. First of all, you are launching your new character. This character is the embodiment of everything you've learned, particularly the embodiment of your knowledge and wisdom with relationships. Virgos have changed dramatically in their relationships, and they relate to people at a whole nother level now, which I'm really enjoying, by the way, having relationships with almost all of you. That said, you'll be practicing how to perform. This is a great week for, performing a speech, performing a wedding, performing something where you can get into your character and you can sort of start working on your character and behavior on the fly. It's important to note that you have to use your feelings to really navigate this, and that whether or not you say something or do something shouldn't be due to the mental consequence. It should be due to the way it made you feel and the way it made your subjects in front of you feel. So how you feel, how you perform, that's really where the power is this last week of Virgo. Now, that said, Mercury in Libra says, once that happens, you have to think of yourself differently when it comes to your self-worth. You've really got to examine, whether or not you have been honoring your self-worth in everything you do. And that Grand Trine says also it's time to tie into that as your emotional. Let's see here, Saturn. Do my math really quick here. So Saturn saying, so yes, this will actually turn into your distribution of wealth. So how valuable you feel, whether or not your heart gets what it really wants in life, and whether or not you end up being who you want to be in the world. So it's very important to raise that self-worth talk inside of you to meet this new character. So, develop the character and then play the part. Now, the Saturn issue for you has to do with relationships. As Saturn double dips into Pisces, you are now opening up to the idea that your latest approach to the relationships is not quite appropriate. And the reason why you want to do that is because when Saturn goes into Aries and stays there, you're going to start systematically changing all of your comfort zones and all of your boundaries. So a way to look at this is, it's not so much that you don't do windows, it's that you don't do ex-husbands. and so for that reason, they end up leading to a lot of conflict of what you don't trust versus choose the right person in the first place, and there won't be issues of trust. So the epicenter for you of this line between Pisces and Aries and the double dip is that you're going back and taking one more look at what your vision for long-term partnership is, and looking to see that if it's set up for conflict in the 8th or not conflict. Is it set up to be trusting, or is it set up to be always looking and testing? That's going to be the real question. And I would imagine that ultimately, Virgos who did not do this work in the last cycles of Saturn double dipping found themselves at war with themselves and then later other people. So it's very important that you get this relationship thing right, that you stay in 29 integrity about it. All right. Oh, did we do the odd for them? Let's see your yod. Yeah. No, I don't think we did the odd. So the yod, no, we did the odd. I should have run wrong order. So the yod is the relationships to personal trust. All right, that's it. Sorry, Virgo, that's it for you. Libras, yours is kind of a toughie because this transformation has to do with how you stay in faith, all right? So Libras are very awake and aware to their environment, and they pick up on everything, the subtlest little things. The problem is that that's not the place that matters. Your reality is formed by your faith in yourself. Your reality cannot be formed by reality itself. So you've got to focus on mastering your faith. And for you, most of the lack of faith is due to the fact that you'll have an emotional upset, and that because you're not good at emotionally coping with things. And so you try to rationalize your way out of it, when really what you need was a good approach to your feelings and how to nurture your feelings better. So this week you'll be perfecting your relationship to God. In other words, changing your prayer, how often you do it, etc. These type of qualities will be what happens. And so you'll be testing, everything will be a test of faith this week. And again, the right answer isn't to eliminate what happened or to fix what happened. The right answer is to feel faithful no matter what happens, and hold that feeling of faith and not let anyone get in the way of it for you. Now, that said, with that faith, Libra, you then have to look at Mercury moving in your sign. When Mercury moves into your sign, you're suddenly be very sharp. With Mercury in Virgo, things have been a bit cloudy, okay? And so with it now in your sign, you're going to find you're much more articulate. You'll start to see where your mind gets in the way of other things. And with that Grand Trine, you'll also see how your personal dreams and how your beliefs in yourself change according to, how much you're thinking for the right response to who you really are. If you treat yourself nicely in your mind, you get nice results. If you treat yourself poorly, you get poor results, okay? Now, Saturn doing its double dip in Pisces for you is that you are realizing that your approach to your lifestyle is very important. The lifestyle you choose is extremely important, especially considering you absorb your life so easily, more than any other sign. You're probably the most porous, so to speak. And so if you don't choose the right place and environment and routine, your whole life can go down. And so what happens is the Pisces who live the right life do not take it out on their partners. The Pisces who have a shitty life and they're happy with their lifestyle tend to take it home on their partners and take it out on themselves. So the magical line between Pisces and Aries is that if you live in a life that's high vibration and supporting you, then you'll find partnerships that will also be high vibration and support you. Just saying. All right. Scorpios. Scorpio, you are going to get a test of your social ambition. And, Scorpios are kind of people who are readable emotionally, but don't usually share their feelings. So you can feel the Scorpios mad at you, but they won't tell you why, right? And so you quite often accidentally send the wrong message in your positioning in the world. Some of us see you as dangerous, frankly, and they avoid you because of the way it feels to be around you. So you're going to find that you feeling good about yourself is important because it draws in good players to you. And so you emotionally get what you deserve, basically, when you focus on your feelings versus just your thoughts. Now, that said, you're going to be tested on exactly how it is that you approach all this, all this social approach in life, like all the details that you keep, all the details you don't keep. How do you master that public life? That's the question. And the answer is you use your emotions to get there, but you'll have to fine tune it yourself. Now, that said, that's the spectrum of this final week of Virgo and the final test. So you might be tested on something like a public rumor or someone posting something shitty about you, or, who knows, but that's just a test. Remember, that's a test designed to rattle you out of your emotional center. Because if you keep the center, you keep the power in the world. If you lose the center, you lose your power in the world. That's pretty much how it works. Now, with that said, also talking about the Saturn double dipping with you has to do with your personal dreams coming true. And so you're going to have to ask yourself, do you have faith that your dreams will come true? And if so, what's that based on, right? Because Saturn double dipping means that if a Scorpio doesn't really feel like they can get what they want, which is the love of their life or something to that effect, then when Saturn goes in Aries, you start raising all hell first on yourself and your body, and then the people around you. So you go through a sick phase, basically. So it's important to be conscientious that the more purified your life is according to your heart, not what you're afraid of, but what you want to create, the more powerful all of your life will be. And when that goes in Aries, it's going to be all about you now building that life brick by brick to support that inner child that's happy. So overall, the spectrum of learning is, like I said, going to be your approach to society. But in the background, you'll be really fine-tuning your relationship to your inner child and carrying that self-love around to other parts of your life. Fun stuff. All righty. Now on to Sagittarius. Virgo for you is leadership and career. And so, again, with lots of signs like you're not always an emotional person. You don't always share your feelings, especially at work. And so what the universe is saying is that's maybe not the best policy. Really, your work should be driven by your passion, and your decisions ought to be made according to how you feel, because it's a conglomerate of all of who you are. So this week, you're basically testing how to drive your career and the best ways to drive your career, or drive yourself out of business. You're going to explore that. And that final eclipse on that 29 degrees is going to be a final imprint of ultimately your place, exactly how things need to happen. So I think it's going to be interesting in that sense for you, and we'll see how it unfolds. Now, with career legacy, you are working to understand that although you want things to be perfect, perfection is relative to the beholder. And so another thing to keep in mind is to feel out what feels best to you versus what is most likable by you. I think that sometimes you like one thing, but you feel something else is better. All right. Now, the other aspect of this that we want to talk about is this Mercury into Libra. When Mercury goes into Libra, you're going to suddenly find yourself a little obsessed about who you are in the world. And what it's time to realize is that you're supposed to be whatever your heart wants you to be. And such is a very accommodating people. So you might have talked yourself out of what your heart really wants. That grand trine is going to help you, and it's going to trying into that your self-worth, and trying into that your approach to relationships. So you're going to find that the way you think of yourself in the world is really tied to how you value yourself, and ultimately the connections that you have. So we'll focus on that. Can't talk today. Now, Saturn dipping back into Pisces for you has to do with emotional security. You've more than any other sign has a lot of problems at home, which is, I think, one reason why Sagittarius is fly the coop as soon as they graduate, right? Now, that said, you're going to be tested on your ability to keep and maintain emotional security. And that is that, what you wanted to make you feel safe won't be there, right? And this focuses you to kind of become strong and compassionate at the same time on altering emotional security to be defined by other things. Now, the line with Aries is, if you have a Sag who is not emotionally comfortable, then that inner child phase, the next phase of the brutal part, might be a brutality to your inner child. Something really comes in where you draw in something that's really hard on you, or someone that's hard on you. But if you focus on feeling really good and mastering that palace of emotional fine arts, I think you're going to find that your inner child is excited and feels nurtured and prepared to go running after what it wants to. So that's a big deal, that perspective there that needs to be understood. So overall, I think with Sagittarius it's like you're very public, but at the end of the day, what gets you there is by being very private and focused on you. All right. Capricorns. Cappies, this final roundup of Virgo has to do with your life purpose. And, when it comes to this, I think Capricorns are too cold. When you tell me your life purpose, it doesn't sound exciting to me. Like, I don't feel your inner child's excitement. And I think that's beyond conservatism. I think it's just that you are very detailed, and you don't want to remit to people just how much you have in plans, right? But overall, your purpose is it's got to be in alignment with your heart. And so the potential breakdown will be in career and direction. If you're not really aligned with your life purpose, then when you go into the next sign, you're going to find that in Libra, everything is kind of messed up as far as, where your career is heading. So from 20 to 29, you want to practice again, like I said, honoring your purpose and what you do know is true, and not putting attention to things you don't know about. Just feel what you know and stick to what you know and what you feel. Now that said, that's going to give you access to this next chapter, which is, of course, I already mentioned it, your career stuff. Now, career and legacy right now is not based on you loving yourself and believing in yourself. It's based on strategy for the most part. And so when Mercury goes to 1 degree Libra and opposes Neptune, you're going to find that the way you think about your career and the way you think about stuff is not appropriate. You're not preparing yourself for good answers. You are instead probably moving to what is easiest. There's no resistance, or you're probably involving someone else in order to get there. So you can become autonomous by having that purpose that your heart believes in, and then having your mind be more mindful of your feelings and more mindful of what your emotional needs are when you go about doing something. Now, that said, the Saturn double dipping for you is interesting. You have an ability to beat yourself up like no one else can, in your head, that is. And so the line between Pisces and Aries for you is your attitude. When you master your attitude about life and about the earth, then you will then go Saturn and Aries very calm with a new foundation understanding of your life. If you try to master your path in your life and you don't include your feelings, then when Saturn goes in Aries, you're going to have a lot of issues and earthquakes and hiccups. So it's really important that you pay attention to how you feel, for one, and how you feel about your purpose. So purpose must not be logical, it must be emotional. If that happens, I think you're going to be in an easier position to do these other things. Now, the big yod for you has to do with your thinking and whether or not your thinking is going to be clear. This is what you're going to find is that if your feelings are taken care of and nurtured, your mind will want to stay on track, and therefore you won't have a temper tantrum child. If, however, your thoughts are allowed to be abusive or go down karmic lines, I do think you'll end up feeling like a piece of whatever as a child, and that will set up a foundation of a bad home rather than a good one. So be mindful that your mind is a very important place to be forgiving and always merciful. All right. Aquariuses. Aquas are interesting because you never know. Oops, sorry, my arm race there. You never quite know how they feel about you because they have Virgo ruling their personal boundaries. So a lot of your control is by what you won't do, right? But I don't hear Aquariuses telling me what they will. And so I think it's because you're not including your feelings when you determine how to change things. You're just using your mind, you're being logical and keeping it air. So you're going to realize that the way to change your life is going to be how you respond to your passion, not the details and having everything on the list with the right passwords. It's going to be the passion that determines your safety. So this will be a final test now for you on, as far as where your boundaries go, whether or not you enforce your boundaries, and if you're on a greater path of transformation or you're on just a path of making things not hurt. And so the transformation is the one that will make the leaders in the New Age, not being hurt, obviously, is part of the old 3D. Now, that said, it's important for you to know that when Mercury goes into Libra, what's changing for you is like now the way you think of yourself in personal beliefs. A lot of your problems with believing yourself had to do with boundary issues. It didn't have to do actually with the belief itself, that you were letting other things tread upon other things in your mind. So the Grand Trine is going to help you to live, love, and be in a brighter spectrum by believing that you deserve it and believing in yourself. You're just putting the needle on the record and forcing it to play right there. That's going to trine in these other areas we've been talking about. One being your ego and how you respond. The other being how your inner child is being able to be heard by you. So when Mercury goes in Libra, it's time to unite your actions with your personal dreams and also with your intention of that moment and believing in yourself. The Cazimi moment for you has to do with money. So Saturn double dipping in Pisces means you go back to the drawing board when it comes to making money in abundance. And with that perspective, you can see that an Aquarius who does not really value themselves and does not manifest what they deserve, when Saturn goes in Aries, it could be all hell breaking loose and mostly in your mind and you talking to others. You'll start combat up again with others if you don't have this good sense of what you deserve spiritually. If you know what you deserve spiritually, then you will move into Aries with probably a peacemaker bill, helping people be peaceful and being that role you're supposed to be right now, which is a leader in the new age. Now, the last thing to point out, of course, is the Pisces issue. And that has to do ultimately with your capacity for your money and thought, like I said. For you, ultimately, you have to know that you're worth it and not ask another question of it. And what ends up happening is that connection is actually what builds a tremendous amount of your belief in yourself and your ability to draw the right boundaries. So they all kind of come full circle there. With Mercury, of course, going into Libra, this will determine then from that perspective that that you can really believe in yourself full-heartedly and not have any questions. So I think for Aquarius it's funny, just, add some lubrication to that emotion and get a little bit more passionate in your connection to others. I think the rest will fall into line on its own. And then there's the Pisces. Pisces, your big test of how you manage life is going to be through relationships. The truth is that up until now, you've not really had a fair relationship. In other words, everyone you've been in a relationship with had a beef with you from a past life. So you're always showing up to kind of make up for something, not create something fair from the beginning. So you really are new at this, having an equal, fair relationship. And you have to realize that it has to be managed through your feelings, not through your thoughts. I know you use your mind to control your feelings. That's one thing, but that won't necessarily get away. You might necessarily get away with that when it comes to long-term partnerships. So, the Cazimi for you is this new approach to long-term and how you think and feel about long-term partnerships. And then from there, you'll be tested on your long-term partnerships on that eclipse that happens, right? So that final eclipse for you is the final stone of how you relate to the world, which then sets you up for your legacy here in the New World Order. Now, that said, the Mercury placement in Libra then deals with your trust in yourself. And so if you come out of this relationship situation not really good and in integrity, then your trust in yourself will be small. And so this grand trine with Mercury and Libra tying into the Gemini energy and the Aquarius energy is you now connecting faith to your emotional foundation, to your trust. So faith and emotional foundation have to be included in your definition of trust. It cannot be just looking at the situation at large or even looking at the history of you. The history of you doesn't matter anymore because you're breaking from this karmic transit. Now, that said, the transition between Saturn double dipping in Pisces has to do with you and your ego. So if you do not perform correctly in the way you put yourself out there, if it's not a spiritual, humble perspective of yourself, if you use your ego for arrogance, for instance, of like being the world's greatest spiritual leader or whatever, not looking at other people, I think you're going to find that when Saturn goes into Aries, you're kind of waging war on self-worth. You have no self-worth. If, however, your character is strong because it is, and because it is fueled by you, then when Saturn goes into Aries, it'll be time for a huge economic boom for you. So Pisces are boom or bust, basically. You'll find yourself really setting yourself up for some poverty and bad times if your ego does not really play this out the master stroke. And of course, the ego and the master stroke all goes down to your approach to long-term partnership. If you, for instance, have this new approach to partnership of mastering it and coming to the table equal and not judgmental, then I think that your test of your ego at 29 degrees Pisces with Saturn will then launch an ego that is humble and does not create money problems. Vice versa, if you in fact do not, honor your relationships in a new paradigm of relating, then when you get your test in, your arrogance might go the wrong way. You'll find yourself worried about money once Saturn goes into Aries. Either way, you're going to find that you do get a greater paycheck. It just matters will you get it now or you have to wait a long time. Depends on all these tests I just brought up. All right, everyone, that's all we have for this week's Soul Horoscope and, of course, our Zodiac weather. And, of course, Namaste Today. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. If you don't know, we are available on podcast audio as well. You can listen to the show every week instead of watch, and many people do. We have a large percentage of our audience just listens. And right now, we can tell you can listen on Spotify, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts, and now iHeartRadio. That's what I want to say. iHeartRadio is a new one. Also, you can find our links at SeriousJoy.social. You can join our Facebook group at SeriousJoy.club. And if you really care about us and you care about the show, please share us, okay? Because people need to find us now. We're entering a new chapter of education. There's a bunch of young students out there. If you've been with me for a while, you'll know that I will help them. Until then, good luck in your final exams. I'll see you next week. I love you. Live, love, be.